I'm John O'Sullivan. This is 1 Hour Detours. And as you know, my job is to make videos about Minnesota and Minneapolis, where I live. And so when I thought of the idea of having Liz Collin on, I was a bit worried. After all, she's the one who made the documentary called The Fall of Minneapolis. And I hear about her all the time because she talks about all the problems that we have in our city. Almost like the opposite of what I try to do on 1 Minute Tours. But I wanted to talk to her in spite of it all. I don't want this podcast to just be an echo chamber of people who agree with me. We had a really good conversation. We got into some disagreements about her work, about our feelings on the city, but we also talked about the thing that we have in common, which is that we both are working in new media, trying to disrupt what's happening over here. We talked for an hour, as the show dictates, and I really found the conversation wildly insightful. I hope you do as well. All right, do you want to do the honors? You can actually hit the button to get us started.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Here we go. Liz Collin, Alpha News, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I wanted to have you on, but I talked to a lot of friends of mine, and they told me that I was platforming you by having you here.
Oh,
and so my first question for you
scandalous.
is, am I platforming you?
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's funny. It's always interesting sometimes to hear what people say about me that actually have never had a conversation with me. So that's why I was happy to go ahead and accept this invitation. I've been an admirer of your work, and I think this is the future of media. You're out there kicking butt. I should actually probably just ask you before this podcast if I'm allowed to swear, because I do.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Again, the new media. It's just such a great thing. But yeah, there's actually a lot to talk about when it comes to new media and what we're doing over at Alpha News. So that's why I'm excited to have the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you see it that way, because I kind of see us as peers. I hope I can say that, because both of us are doing this new media thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious to talk to you about this. I mean, you come from the institutional media backgrounds, and I come from tourism, actually. It's like a totally different thing, but both of us have found our way onto new media platforms. I mean, do you define yourself as a new media person now? Is that something that you think about when you go to do reporting?
You know, just my journey a bit, John, I kind of left that corporate media world because I was really bothered by many of the things that we were pushing on the nightly news, or more importantly, perhaps, what we were not telling our audience. I have loved my entire life being a journalist. I started, honestly, when I was 10 years old, writing a newspaper. Neighborhood News was the name of the newspaper.
Yeah, really?
But I always believed in that, telling other people's stories, informing the public, holding the powerful accountable, all of those things, right? We learn about in J school. And I don't really think the corporate media is doing a good job of that. And thankfully, I think we live in an era now where I was allowed to do something about that with new media. I still consider myself a journalist at heart, a reporter. I also really care about Minnesota and care about the community here. I am a lifelong Minnesotan.
We're both southern Minnesota, actually.
Yes, that's
I'm from
right.
Mankato.
Yeah.
So
and there's a lot to report on here, and there's a lot to, these stories that you're not hearing about on the nightly news, and that's what we try to bring to light over at Alpha News.
I was really keen. When I look at your reporting, there's so many different ways that this conversation can go with what we can talk about right here. The area that I have any knowledge in, really, I guess, is media. And so I wanted to talk about that. But then last week, there's this thing that happened that I feel like we have to talk about, which is this assassination of Charlie Kirk. Yeah. He's someone that you interviewed on your show. I'm sure you have thoughts about this. How have you been processing it?
Yeah, just absolutely horrific. There's been actually this whole summer, it's just been such a heavy summer in Minnesota in particular. Mm-hmm. But Charlie was someone who really bravely backed our work at Alpha News from the very beginning, even before I was there, which I've been there just about 4 years now. He interviewed me on a few different subjects involving the Fall of Minneapolis, the documentary, just different things happening in Minnesota. But really, you could tell a genuinely kind person who also believed in dialogue. Many people don't believe that. I mean, you just talk about the backlash you were getting to even platform me here today. But that was something that was so important to Charlie. People really do nowadays take their corners and don't participate in those conversations. And I think that's at a real loss, not only for what's happening in the state of Minnesota, but across the country. But also just the how horrible it was to see. I've never had to, experience something like that. Mm-hmm. You talk about what happened to JFK. luckily the cameras were really grainy back then,
Right,
and you
right.
couldn't. But just to see that horror play out like we did on social media, you almost can't unsee it now. It's horrible.
It's hard not to untangle it with, in my neighborhood, we just had this mass shooting happen at a school. And so there's just been so many acts of gun violence that have occurred recently. And in that case, you didn't have this high definition footage, just this grisly thing. I have luckily so far avoided seeing the gory.
Don't watch it. Yeah.
That's what I've heard. But my producer I was with, we were actually in Ireland doing a shoot, and she came down having just seen it, and she was pale, right? Like, I think that even it's in the abstract when any of these things happen. But this is one of those things I think the way in which it happened, it almost reminds me of, like, it's a very different scale, but like 9/11 feels like an event that was designed with shocking media in mind.
Yeah.
And this kind of feels the same, right?
Yeah, and I have a son. He's 12 years old, and the way that they're exposed now to media at that young age, he was shown the video. I would have never,
Oh my God.
but it's kind of like it's too late. I mean, that's even how I saw it. I just happened to open up X on my phone, and it was everywhere and I actually thought it was fake at first. There was something that was not right, but yeah, just this creation to kind of in a way. In a way, it seems like there's this horror that, are we supposed to actually get used to this? I mean, nobody. This is this is absolutely shocking. And I think it's also been shocking and something we've been focused on over at Alpha News. The reactions to people have been. People cheering this on is pretty awful as well, and I think newsworthy on many levels, whether they're public employees or teachers, people in healthcare, talking about how this was a good thing. Some people have posted they wish he would have suffered and whatnot, and that's where I think we really need to get at the core of all of this, where this hatred and this vitriol is coming from, because that is really quite disturbing.
Yeah, I think across the political spectrum, everyone seems to recognize this as a really disturbing moment in American history.
I hope so.
And something that is, just actually as we're recording right now, it's 12 hours ago, Jimmy Kimmel's show got canceled because he made a joke that people took offense to. And it just feels like a time that, like, it's a weird contradiction. Is like, we can see the most grisly footage of something online, but then we also have people acting with their words quite callously, but then the repercussions of those words are I don't know what to make of it. It seems like an unrecognizable place to me.
I'll just talk my personal experience. There really was an effort, and in my instance, it was by the left. It was a political situation after the death of George Floyd, my husband being a longtime Minneapolis police officer, serving as the union president at the time. But there was this push to dehumanize him, dehumanize me. He was, of course, in the KKK. Of course, he was a white supremacist, and all of these, really horrific words that they use. I was demoted and canceled, basically, off of WCCO. But during that time, nobody would speak out really in support. Whether it was colleagues or, even people in the community. And I'm heartened that people are like, you know what? Enough. Like, this is enough. Our governor and his vitriol he spews. I said I wouldn't be political. What am I? 10 minutes
I know,
in?
you've gotten 8 minutes in. My God.
But I also think that these are things that we really do have to talk about. And I've lived through it. I really have. I mean, I've probably received more death threats than any reporter in this market. I mean, no doubt about it. Somebody went to jail for sending us a bomb threat in the mail, but something you probably never heard about on the local news. I think that there's also, I believe, of course, as a journalist, everybody believes in freedom of speech, but also, you don't get the privilege to have a job by spewing some of this stuff. And again, I really had nothing to do with this whole thing, and I would never. I mean, I never post anything like that. I don't wish any of this upon anybody. So it's very different to me. So people are trying to kind of come at it at both sides and whatnot. But this is also just part of the part of the playbook to dehumanize and delegitimize, certain people. And I also think fear is a very powerful thing in Minnesota. We are people, John. I think I can speak for you, but maybe we don't like confrontation, and we don't, it's like we'll leave somebody else to sort of fight this battle. And I also think that my faith led me here in a way also, and someone like Charlie has been someone that I look up to, and also it's kind of like we can't keep quiet, because where has that really gotten us? I don't really think it's really moved the needle by staying quiet.
It's interesting. It gets ahead of where I was going to go with the conversation, but I did want to talk about the dehumanizing thing, because something that I saw, because I've binged so much of your stuff in anticipation of this. And
I'm sorry, you must be depressed right now. Yeah, I'm going to eventually do happy stories again.
Something I know. I mean, you're kind of locked in a very serious expression. I don't see. I mean, the thing I see a lot of is, when you talk about what happened after George Floyd, you talk about the people as the mob. You talk about Democrats in Minnesota as getting most of their funding from out of state. We talk about Governor Walz as smuggling secret. You infer that he smuggled secrets into China, military secrets.
I didn't infer that. I mean, that's actual news reporting, talking to sources and people who went to the FBI, inferring that. So.
I mean, even on Tucker Carlson, he at one point said he thought Tim Walz should be investigated for sex crimes. And
which I did not respond to.
You didn't respond to either way. I mean, you could have said, whoa, what are we talking about? All of that seems to be in that same realm of dehumanizing to me. Like, the people that you disagree with, you're putting in a camp of wild wackos over there, as opposed to people that have disagreements that we can talk about. It's
well, I'll say, good example. I'll say with Governor Walz, I've probably maybe 24 times, if not more, reached out for an interview with him. He's yet to comment ever, not only to me for my book and the documentaries we've worked on, but to my colleagues over at Alpha News. His silence in many ways speaks volumes. And I will say that over at Alpha News, we have done more reporting on Governor Walz than anyone else. Why? Because the mainstream, with the corporate media in town, they are very left-leaning. That is not me just saying that. That's basically anybody with a brain. But again, they're so careful about what they don't say.
KSTP is like famously center right.
Why then did they not break the story about Governor Walz and his military service when they knew about it, when they knew about him lying about his rank for years, whether it be running for Congress, even and again, Alpha News broke that story. Eventually, they went ahead and touched on it for a few seconds. But it's very different about how the media handles it. And I witnessed it myself, John, so I'm just speaking from my own personal experience at WCCO. I knew it was a left-leaning newsroom. I never thought it was appropriate, though, to really show your politics in the newsroom, and that's something I took very seriously. However, we had a political reporter talking very openly in the newsroom, talking about how great it was going to be when President Trump lost the election, and we're all going to be here to witness it together. Did I think that was appropriate in the moment? No. Did I speak up and say, "God, I really hope Trump wins"? No, I did not. People literally came to work after the first day or the first time he was elected. They were crying. Some people could not come to work. Is that appropriate as journalists? No. I mean, it's not. So I speak from experience to know that it is a left-leaning press corps in Minnesota. And also, I think it's why Alpha News is doing so well. We are basically the top read news source in Minnesota every day, our website. And, we have almost as many Facebook followers as any other media in town, X followers and whatnot. And when I went to Alpha 4 years ago, there were 1.5 people working at Alpha News. We now have 5 of us that are full time, but we really are a very small but mighty team. But what does that show? It shows that people, want more of the truth. And to me, that's what reporting has always been about. It's not your truth. It's not my truth. It is the truth. That is actually a thing. And also, we live in a world now that journalists, I feel like, they care more about how the news affects them. It's about them. I think we can blame our mobile devices for that. But I think that what I applaud about you is you're going out and you're talking to people. The news is about other people. It's about other stories, and that's what we need to share. And there are many people that we try to platform over at Alpha News that they come to us because they say, "Hey, I tried to talk to. I sent my tip into KARE 11. I sent my tip into WCCO. I sent an op-ed, a horrible." horrible example, Annunciation parent who submitted their op-ed to the Star Tribune. They would not publish it. Why? Because they were not going along with the, we need to grab your guns in the wake of this. And they wrote an op-ed, and so we published it at Alpha News. So there's clearly a need, a want, and a desire for more of the story.
My perspective is that the temperatures are way too hot when it comes to political whatever right now. I think the perspective of Alpha News that I saw is like, we're in a foxhole right here in a state that is failing, that is burning. Minneapolis is a failed city. It's a heaping pile of rubble. These are the ways that it's described on there. And it's just not my lived experience. I live in South Minneapolis now.
And I lived in Minneapolis for more than a dozen years also.
And so
how many homicides have happened right around here, John? Are you aware?
I mean, there are some serious problems
just
with the city.
This year.
Right. I mean, there was just a shooting right near two mass shootings in one day that occurred on Lake Street just the other day. So
it simply did not happen.
I'm not unaware,
6 years ago.
That's not a burning rubble. That's not a trash heap that's happening here.
What in your definition then has to happen before you think that it in fact is burning rubble? And we've never actually used those words. That's not what we.
I mean, the Fall of Minneapolis is a documentary that you produced, that you're the
and
creator
I
of.
think you can go ahead and point to statistics that show there are clear problems here.
But the Fall of Minneapolis, that expression, the Fall of Minneapolis, that's what we use to describe cities that were toppled in World War II. Like, you're taking these hyperbolistic descriptors to describe a city that, like any city, has challenges, but it's not the fall of Berlin or something like that. That's where I struggle.
Well, I also think that's your opinion. There's another documentary out right now. I think it's called Precarious State. That's very similar to the Fall of Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. It features some Democrats in it, so it's going to be run across the state of Minnesota, whereas my documentary, of course, could not be. But I also
your documentary did fine. You did a lot of views, right?
Yeah, it's been viewed by, I think it's close to 13 million people.
Every comment, every video I ever make says, watch the Fall of Minneapolis.
But point to anything in that documentary that is false.
Well, actually, let me say one thing I really was intrigued by in the documentary. One of the parts that you've spoken a lot about is that you got the access to the body camera footage of George Floyd's murder. And in that, you show the 10 minutes leading up to it. And there's something that I had not seen until watching your documentary of the entire interaction. And it's uncommented on. It's actually kind of a bold choice for a documentary to start with 17 minutes of just straight up footage. And that was remarkable to me. It's just a creative choice.
Well, I guess I'll just, to me, that's not even a creative choice. That should have been the role of news groups back then. It's not like we, filed a FOIA request to obtain this and waited for months. This was public information. Mm-hmm. And I always thought the question should have been, why wasn't this released sooner? Sure, it was released, but it was under basically lock and key at the courthouse. You had to go ahead and sign your name and you could watch it yourself. And the only reason the public became aware of it was a couple months after the arrest of George Floyd, when it was leaked by an international news agency.
How'd that happen? Tell me more about the specifics of that. Lock and key at a courthouse, like literally?
That was the ruling and attached to the case. They said it would create too much more division basically in the community, and this was the ruling by Judge Peter Cahill at the time. So you could go to the courthouse, watch the video.
Did you do that yourself?
And I was not allowed to report on anything involving George Floyd.
Oh, because you're at CCO then?
Yes,
yep.
yes. So
okay.
And that made sense to me. It was obviously a conflict of interest with my husband being the police union president. But I was trying at the time to say there is a lot more to this. Why aren't we reporting this or that? But it did not fit the narrative. So to me, I mean, I understand people certainly are allowed to have their own opinions, and I think that is great. And again, why I'm here to talk about that. But I'm talking about my own lived experience. Mm-hmm. I spent nearly 15 years at WCCO. I spent more than 20 years in corporate media, and I can just tell you from my own personal experience that they are not telling the truth. Do you
dispute, like, is my reaction to what I see with Alpha News wrong in your eyes, where I say it's hyperbolistic? It's one that's like, this is a
absolutely. I mean, we really, if you look at our stories, we are fact-based reporters. Mm-hmm. We have yet to issue a correction in any our.
Yeah, I mean, media is about framing. You know this. Like, framing is everything. And so, like, my lived experience in Minneapolis is one where I take my kids, we bike over to Lake Harriet, and we go to the playground, and there's all these things that happen. And I've got, if you've seen my channel, you see I have some very serious concerns about our community and our country right now. But I mean, 90% of the time, I'm not thinking about that when I'm going to the ice cream shop or going to daycare or whatever. It's when I watch your channel, it makes me feel anxious. It makes me feel like, the world is on fire. And I don't know that rhetoric matches the reality of what just everyday life is in the Twin Cities.
I guess I would actually need a better example. I don't think that every day that's the, but again, our mission is to focus on the things that the other media is not. And Puppies and Rainbows does. It sells. It does for other newscasts. That's not us. That's not what we're doing. We focus on statistics. Again, statistics show homicides are up in Minneapolis. Severe crimes, they're up. Cops, there were 900 cops at the beginning of May of 2020. There are 260 cops on the streets of Minneapolis right now. These are statistics, and this is what we report. Sure, like I even told you, I maybe would eventually like to get back to Puppies and Rainbows, but there really is a need to inform the public of what actually is.
To be clear, I'm not saying
that
I'm not saying that the news should be Puppies and Rainbows. What I'm saying is that, I guess where my perspective comes from is that for the last 4 years, every day I've published a video about Minnesota. And because I live in Minneapolis, a lot of times it's in Minneapolis. And I've generally tried to sidestep the conversation about whether this place is good or bad, because I feel like that's a very well-trodden area. And in my mind, like, I go to, there's a bar I go to, a cocktail bar, where I go and chat with the bartenders, and we don't talk about, the difference in shootings that are happening here, or the police situation, or who the mayor is. We just talk about everyday life. And yet every video that I post, there's this perception by a lot of people that, like, we are this dangerous place to live. And I don't share that perspective with people in my community on a day-to-day basis.
Again, that's your lived experience. But again, I would just say that crimes that are happening now, John, simply did not happen 6 years ago. Do you think hundreds? I think it's actually thousands of car windows were just smashed out.
Yeah, that's insane, wasn't it?
Yeah, for a couple of weeks. Talk about this horrific school shooting in Minneapolis that just happened. Did that happen? But again, instead of focusing on what I clearly think is a mental health conversation that needs to be happening, which is some of the stories we've been doing over at Alpha News, there is this echo chamber of gun violence, and that is the only thing that is focused on. And again, I being from Minnesota, I can just tell you there is a dramatic difference in Minneapolis now, John. It's clear to anyone. I would go out to lunch downtown on Hennepin Avenue at CCO, or go to the Caribou for coffee. Always bustling, people were out and about. It's a ghost town in many situations. I'm actually downtown quite a bit for work. I'm not the one saying, I never go into Minneapolis anymore. I certainly think a little bit differently about when and where I go. But even for myself, I can, you can see for yourself. People aren't stupid. People, and maybe I'm just going to challenge you. You should perhaps have those conversations about politics. And again, this is a Democratic-controlled city. It's not like the Republicans have ruined Minneapolis. That's not what this is. And anybody can figure that out. But you also have a city council here where the majority of them are self-proclaimed socialists. And you can look at their website and take a look at what the DSA believes in, and this is what you're voting for. I mean, if you live here, it's
so interesting to hear you talk about.
You have Mary Moriarty yesterday announced that she is no longer going to enforce. If you're picked up basically on a traffic violation with a bunch of guns in your trunk, you're not going to go ahead and be prosecuted by the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. You don't find that just a little crazy as a resident here?
I certainly thought it was a weird prioritization to make right now, given what's happening in the city.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's so interesting.
So you're admitting there are issues here?
Oh, yeah. Okay. I didn't say anything otherwise.
You just don't like the title of my documentary.
No, I don't like the title of your documentary.
It's not the rise of Minneapolis, I'll tell you that.
I mean, I also don't like just going into the city and seeing billboards that say your city sucks. That's how I interpret it, right? Your
I haven't seen any of those billboards. And that's never been a headline of
the billboards say the Fall of Minneapolis. I'm interpreting
talk about
that.
hyperbole.
Okay, fair. But I see your face on billboards all over town. And there,
You do?
Yeah, there's one on there's one on
I
Highway
think there was
62.
only one in Minneapolis, to be fair, John, and it was actually great because some haters were posting about it, and then we just used it for marketing purposes.
Well, I mean, to be fair, when I think of my town, I think of the metro area. I actually have a belief that we should consolidate all of our cities into one big 494, 694. We want to make Minneapolis St. Paul again. We want to bring all the cities
as long
into
as
one
Mary
area.
Moriarty is not our county attorney and Jacob Fry is not in charge.
Well,
Okay,
who are you supporting for Minneapolis mayor? Who are you endorsing? Do you have one?
No, I stay out of it. I actually believe it or not have a pretty good sense of humor, so I don't take this all too seriously. But what I do take seriously is safety, and I really think it is a number one concern for people, and it bothers me because it really does not have to be like this. It wasn't always like this. This should not just become acceptable.
It's a serious question, though. I mean, do you have someone that you support for mayor of Minneapolis who's running?
I really, as a nonprofit news employee, I can't actually even, speak freely about all of that.
Okay.
You can catch our reporting, though, over at alphanews.org, John.
Yeah, let me ask about Alpha News. What is Alpha News? Because I was looking for, is it on a channel? There's a bunch of different places that it has podcasts, there's social clips. It looks like broadcast news when I look at the clips on YouTube.
Well, thank you. We try to at least make things look professional. We're not having quite as much fun as you on different places. But we are alphanews.org, the website. We have our YouTube channel, Alpha News MN. That is where you'll find my podcast a couple times a week. And then we're also on all the podcast platforms. That's called Liz Collin Reports. It's a super creative name for the podcast, I know. And yeah, we're on Instagram and X and Facebook.
Is it a TV show? Is it a network? Is it social clips? What is it that you make?
Well, I don't think they would give us an FCC license, John.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, maybe someday.
I think the FCC is pretty friendly right now.
We're not a broadcast, but also this is what I actually saw, and this is a good thing to bring up as well. What I saw in the local news is people just are not watching the news anymore. Mm-hmm. That's just. Duh. This is how they are. Nobody's watching we're going to get home in time for the 6 o'clock news. We're going to watch the 10 o'clock news before we go to bed. It just doesn't happen like it used to because there are so many other, mediums to check out nowadays. So I saw that even, when I was at WCCO, the ratings are just not what they once were. Where are people getting their news? On their phones. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, dramatically, the dramatic rise in that, and also on their computers. And that's where Alpha News is. We just are trying to, which is why we are able to do so many stories and just push them out in a way that we're able to. You don't need the fancy television station in downtown Minneapolis anymore.
That's what I'm getting at. Is I found it so interesting because I was watching it. I kept looking for the show or what is the thing? What's the upriver thing that this comes from? Because on the clips, it looks like what I'd see on broadcast news. And so then I kept looking on the website for where it is. And it took me a while to realize, oh no, the social clips are the thing. That is the thing that you're putting out there. And in some cases, you're doing long, multi-hour documentaries. And in some cases, you're doing 7-minute interviews. But it's ad hoc. You're kind of changing up the form. And that's something that's pretty innovative in the media space, I'd say.
Yeah, I've actually seen now a couple stations. They've done some documentaries as well, but it just makes sense because again, this is part of the problem, in my opinion, too, is that people are only watching very short clips, right? So they're watching 10 to 20 seconds. But we also want to offer, here is a documentary, here is a full conversation with someone, because also, for 20 years doing the news, you basically go out for the day. You come back and you boil that down into like a minute 20.
Right.
That's really hard. That's hard to do. And it's hard. It's hard to, because sometimes, you say stories have two sides. Well, sometimes there's like 7 sides to a story, and that's really hard to boil down into 3 or 4 second sound bites here and there, to make it look good, present the facts and whatnot. So that's what's been exciting over at Alpha News, to do things just a little bit differently. But
how do you
also
decide what to put out then? Are you like, we need a 7-minute clip, we need an hour-long documentary this month? Is there like a schedule?
There's no real. We publish 5 stories a day.
Okay.
That's what we do, and then in addition to that, I'm doing the 2 podcasts a week. I also go out and I do a lot of events, speaking events, because I think that is important, to just talk to people, to try to answer their questions. I'll be honest, I don't have all the answers. But I also think it's important to have those those conversations as well. And also, we actually have quite a bit of younger followers because this is how they've been brought up, watching the news and getting information that way. So
the political right is so far ahead with media literacy with young people. I feel like I've said this to a bunch of people. Is like the most I ever like. I'm swinging to the left politically, but like the most I ever.
I couldn't tell.
I sent sarcasm. But like the most I ever felt like a kinship with Trump was when he was on Theo Vaughn's podcast and he talked about doing cocaine. He didn't talk about doing it. He asked Theo Vaughn.
I was going to say,
cocaine?
I don't think...
what's because he's like a famous teetotaler. But like he said, what's cocaine like? And it was like this genuine moment of curiosity that you get from podcasting, from this format of just like us talking. Like you came in today and we got to just talk as people for a little bit. We sat down and like the hour-long format, it's so different than... This is what I don't understand, or what I'd like to understand from you is like you lean into the format of broadcast in terms of what the aesthetic is, right? The split screen, you on one side staring down the camera, the other person staring down the camera.
I'm a little old school,
yeah, right?
Yeah.
But then the distribution of it is new school. Like, tell me about that decision.
Yeah, I think that, when I first went to Alpha, I mean, literally we had... I went there and I just said, I like what you guys are doing. It just seems that you're presenting more information that people really need here, but have you ever thought about video? And they had done some things here and there, nothing much. And basically you can just Google like, hey, you just need a television monitor, nice microphone. And I wanted to, bring the aesthetics up, like it should look professional. And, there are enough people in town. I think, I've had to ruin their careers because of course they're associated with the right-wing media now. But that they believed in the mission as well, so I was able to recruit a few people. And what's interesting also is we actually get a lot of tips at Alpha News from mainstream media folks, people that are like, hey, there's this, but I could never say this on wherever. So we will put a lot of stories that way. And I knew that I could sort of plug in. I knew enough about media in Minnesota. I knew enough people. And I also think that that's what makes... reporters good and trustworthy also. You have to have the sources, you have to vet stories. I've been, cast in a light where I'm some crazy conspiracy theorist and yada, yada. But I really think if you look at our content, if you look at my content, you look at my career, that's not the case at all. And I think that's really what's exciting about media now. You just don't need much. You don't need the $60,000 camera. I mean, that's what cameras were $60,000 when I started the business.
This is like we have like you can't. It's out of frame, obviously, but
and
like,
it looks better.
We have wires all over the floor, right over here. We're just in an office. I just heard someone like bopping around upstairs. We are so far from like the soundproofed studio and all the rest. But then why lean into the broadcast aesthetic? Like, I mean, my thing is like I hold my camera, I move around, and all that stuff. Like, is there something that gives legitimacy to that? Do you think?
Yeah, I think that, we kind of just have the one shot kind of, but we do go out in the field and, cover things. We did some coverage of the Charlie Kirk vigils last night, but also we believe in taking, there was a really large turnout in Delano and Eden Prairie as well. But we really also believe in taking a lot of other people's content that they're sent to us and giving that a bit more of a stage, I guess, if you will, for our audience. I mean, that's really what the media has kind of turned into, a lot of citizen journalism, and we try to capitalize on that. A lot of people have just become reporters, but we're also doing our due diligence as journalists to check things out and, reach out for comment. We believe in those same ideals, I would
I'm just
say.
so interested in the aesthetic of it because I think it communicates so much, right? Like, Tucker Carlson, whose show I got to watch because I wanted to see your interview on it.
You're not tuning into Tucker on a daily basis?
I don't watch him on the regular, no. But I mean, he's like I find him to be such an interesting cipher of a guy. Sometimes I see him as like a kind of partisan saying talking points, and sometimes he does stuff that's like way out, like he's just saying what he thinks, like the Ted Cruz interview,
Yeah.
right? But either way, that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is the aesthetic of it. Like when he went from Fox over to that, he was being more homey. It feels like you're in his workspace in like this cool farm on the countryside and all that. I mean, and so I wanted you to talk a little bit more about, like, did you have a say in the aesthetic of Alpha News and what it looks like over there? Like you looking down the camera, the cityscape of Minneapolis in the background. How did that come to be?
Yeah, over at Alpha News, I am the oldest employee, so I kind of
really?
consider myself
We're like the same age.
in charge. Yeah,
That's not good.
Which, so I actually have learned a lot from my colleagues, to be quite honest, and that's what's been interesting. They grew up. This is the medium with clips and YouTube Reels, and so that was very new for me to try to figure out how we were gonna do all that. So we've kind of had like old school meets new school and merge all that. But I also think that we want to bring professionalism to things. And we are people that have been trained in, journalism school and, have the backgrounds to support what we're doing. But that was, I think, really important to me to bring that. And I'll just say, just on Tucker's that experience, which was really cool and neat experience. It's really the middle of nowhere in Maine, and I was told that the building that I was in, Tucker's wife bought basically for boat storage for them. So it's like this old garage, but they were paying far too much, I was told. This is by Tucker himself.
Yeah.
For boat storage each year in Maine. So they just bought this old building, and sure enough, there were some boats in there. They kind of, lined the place with books. It's his great grandmother's table. Actually, I think it's his grandmother's table where the podcast takes place. There's a little kitchenette inside, and I said that I got my makeup done like next to the belt sander in the wood shop. So, but that again, talk about new media,
right.
And also I think it really provides kind of a level of comfort for people.
The thing that you're doing also that like is unique here is that Tucker is doing like a nationwide thing, but you're focusing on hyper local. I mean, it's Alpha News MN is the website, right? And so like, what is it about? Where is the opportunity there? Because you and I are both kind of doing the same thing of focusing on this hyper local content in a new media environment where most people are going broad.
Yeah, I just think that in Minnesota, again, you have the nightly news. I did it. I did it for a couple decades, but it's the same story told the same way in the same order. And here's sports, and here's weather. There's a lot more. There's just a lot more going on. Deeper conversations, people that you can find basically more for a podcast platform that you're not going to platform on the local news. And that's what I try to do over at Alpha News with my podcast. Just maybe make you think a little bit differently or consider this side of things. Or, for example, after the horrific shooting at Annunciation, I've had a couple different pediatricians on, because I know that a lot of mainstream media will not touch the issue of gender transitioning of young children. And a conversation with a doctor from Florida. This is the first medical board where that has been, basically they do not allow gender transitions among young people in Florida. Why not? What does the evidence show? He had all the receipts and has sort of been fighting back against this as a pediatrician in Florida. But it's just an interesting perspective. And I just know a lot of these people, the local news isn't going to reach out to a Florida doctor. That makes no sense. But also these are issues that I think are important for us to consider here in Minnesota as well. And frankly, we have, again, I've said this, a very small team, but I'm positive that we get more news tips daily than probably any other place in town, because I again have something to compare it to. And why is that? It's because people just know that they don't have the voice on the nightly news. We've done so many stories about fraud over at Alpha News before
you go on that, I just want to touch on the last thing.
You're not going to press the button.
No,
right?
not yet. Let's not worry yet.
Okay.
We have so much to talk about. I'm liking this. It's fun. I mean, before we get on to that, brings up something that I wish I would have counted it. I was looking at the recent stories on the Instagram feed for Alpha News, and it was a tremendous amount of percentage of the stories that were about the trans conversation, right? It's something that you're talking about a lot in the wake of the Annunciation shooting. I was comparing that to like what you said to Tucker Carlson after the Melissa Hortman assassination, where he said people just go back to their political silos whenever this thing happens, and they're just trying to find a connection to Trump.
I bet you actually can't find better reporting in town than after the assassination of Melissa Hortman. I led the way in breaking everything involved with that. I had the conversations with the accused killer in prison. The other local stations basically said, we've talked to him, but we're not going to put anything Vance Belter has to say on the news. We led the way in reporting about Capitol security. If you can go back and look at our reporting, I'm very confident in what we reported in the wake of that as well. Conversations that needed to happen.
I gave it a shot myself. I don't really think of myself as a reporter, but I went to the courtroom and saw Vance Belter on his arraignment on the Monday after the shootings. And so I saw it. But the thing that struck me when you were talking about that was you kind of bemoan this thing that we do where we go into our political silos. And it just resonated with me because I agree with it. I think that anytime these things happen, I described it to the mayor when I had him on here, Mayor Fry, of like it's one of those little line dancing diagrams that we do when there's any act of violence that seems to happen that upsets us in a great way, where the political left talks about guns and the political right talks about mental health and, if applicable, trans issues in here. And it feels there's like a level of disingenuousness in that it feels like we do that, we tire ourselves out, and then we just move on to the next thing, and then nothing happens.
Well, frankly, I wish we didn't have to move on to the next thing. There's been so much to move on to. That's what's, I also kind of feel like in news in Minnesota, it's almost like we're in a state of like shock constantly, or PTSD. I think that's actually a real thing. Whether it's political assassinations, the worst rioting in U.S. history, this school shooting. I mean, there's just been so many horrific violence. There's been so many things in a very short amount of time that it's hard. And I don't disagree with you. I mean, but also partly that sadly becomes part of the news cycle is that it's the next, the next thing.
You know the Onion headline about this?
What's that?
Every time a mass shooting happens, the Onion publishes a headline that says, "No way to stop this," says only nation in which this regularly happens. And they republish it every time. They just change the facts and figures in the story, but the bulk of it remains the same. And it's happened so much, happened like dozens of times now. They've published the same story. And it's just sobering, especially as someone, I lived overseas for 13 years. It just, I don't get it. All of my friends from overseas are like, "What are you doing? What's going on in this country where this keeps happening again and again?" And I don't have an answer for them.
Yeah, and I think that we've never. That's the hard part. Again, not a politician. When you're just a reporter, it's like you just try to report the facts or have conversations that you think matter and can make a difference. But I'll just say, going back to the documentary that you hate the name, I'm going to really get you to come over to my side.
I complimented the opening of it. Come on, I said the opening was good.
The thing about media, I've seen it for myself, how it can change opinions. I mean, I will say that I have never, and again, the Fall of Minneapolis, we thought if we can get 1 million people to watch this that would be like amazing. And we got 1 million people to watch it, I think within like days, like 3 or 4 days, it hit 1 million. But I still, to this day, receive emails from people saying, I thought this was one thing, and I just wish I was told the truth about all of it, or more of what actually really went on, because I was led down this path. So I will say that the media can play an important part also to bring information to light. To I can't do anything about policy. I actually don't really like politics. I'm going to be quite honest. But I really like people, and I care about people. And then that was something that I really learned for myself as a journalist with the Fall, was that it is important. It is important to bring these facts to light and to not stay silent and to give other people a voice. I mean, I think that you're not going to find anything where you're going to actually talk to the people that were involved, like the Fall of Minneapolis. We talked to police officers that were there. We talked to the cops that are in prison. We spoke to their families, and we were able to really delve into the court case more. But opinions can be changed. Hearts can be changed. Minds can be changed. I heard from somebody this summer, kind of an interesting story that was that ran into someone with a Minneapolis police shirt, a retired cop, who then emailed me, and they said they were a family from California, and they said, "Have you seen the Fall of Minneapolis?" And they they said yes, and they said we're not. We voted differently this last election because of that, because of the lies that we were told attached to that. And so I've heard from, it takes a lot for people to admit they're wrong. That's the way the world works now, right? Nobody ever admits that. But I've heard from a lot of Democrats, whether they're in Minnesota or elsewhere, that have said, "Gosh, I'm really sorry I was led down this path, and that's not what this was at all. This wasn't the most racist police killing in the country. That this is, in history, I should say." And that's what we were told, and we were told that by our so-called leaders in Minnesota and our local media.
Do you like Minneapolis?
I mean, of course. I mean, I had a house here
Yeah.
I worked here for 15 years. Do I like the politics?
Maybe it would help me.
Do I like
hear
the
you-
politics of Minneapolis? No, of course
Sure, but it'd help me to understand. This is when people talk about Minneapolis nowadays. It becomes like a political signifier if they don't live
not.
here,
Well,
right?
almost how could it not be?
Well, I mean, because it's a city, right? It's not a political whatever. It's just a city where people live and work and eat and live their lives.
After my lived experience and what I've lived through, which again, I come at this obviously at a different angle than many people. I cannot not associate politics with Minneapolis at this point.
Can you share with me some things you do like about Minneapolis?
I've said I've interviewed many people that live in Minneapolis on Alpha News.
I know, but like stuff like you, like are there like neighborhoods or things to do or things that you like about the weather or
I
whatever?
lived very close to Lake Harriet. That's where my son went to Annunciation. He was a preschooler there. We were members of that Catholic church at Annunciation. So I don't really think that's exactly a fair question, John.
You don't?
No, the reason I do what I do is
Yeah.
because I care about people, and I also think that I really believe in things can get better. Do you want it to get better for you, for your family? Or
Yeah.
you're fine with the way things are?
I mean, I think that politics are one aspect of life. I watched the football game with some friends this weekend, and we were in the backyard having a nice time. And it's this beautiful, like, autumnal weather that we have over here. I really like our weather that we have. I like the way that we have this walk around the lake. I like the kind of interesting multicultural environment that we have here of like this like Scandinavian, Hmong, Somali, everything. I like the downtown is struggling right now, but I like what's happening in North Loop. I like all the independent businesses that are coming up over there.
Do you know what the safest place of Minneapolis is?
What's that?
The North Loop.
Yep.
So
And
there's
I
a
think North
direct
Loop is great.
association.
And so there are things I really like about the city. And so I don't mean it to be like an unfair question. I just mean it to be like, I want to connect with you, I guess, because I see
Well,
so
I'm
much.
sorry you haven't connected with me yet. I guess we really have some work to do.
Just
here.
because, I think it's your, important for your organization to promote the documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis, talk about all the things that are wrong with it. But it's also a city that I think deserves some praise. The people here are great, like you said.
I guess I just really have a problem with lies as a reporter. That's the biggest thing. Again, this is why I did the book. They're lying, the media, the left, and the death of George Floyd, because I don't think it's possible to move forward without telling the truth. And that's really where I've come at this. Well, and public safety is important to me. Sure, I'm married to a police officer, but I've always covered like cops and courts as kind of like my beat. As a reporter, so it's something I'm interested in, and I believe in supporting our community heroes. We've lost so many officers in Minnesota. We lost 5 in a matter of 13 months. That's never happened in Minnesota history. It's directly related to many of these lies that have been spread. So I don't think that's a fair question to say, do I like Minneapolis? I mean, I'm a lifelong Minnesotan. And that's also why I want people to care more about what's happening in Minneapolis, to be honest, and why we do so many stories over at Alpha News. This is Minnesota's largest city. Everything you've mentioned about lakes and multiculturalism, that also exists in the suburbs. I'll just have you know. But things that I appreciate about the suburbs as well. So again, spending so much time in Minneapolis, did I leave because I hated the city? No, I'm thankful, frankly, that I was able to leave before all of the the defunding of the police took place. But it also seems to be the people. I get it. You have a stake in the game. You have a house here. This is your community.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can also put blinders on a bit and not be completely honest. So it's okay to see. There's literally a homicide memorial on Hennepin Avenue at 8th and Hennepin. Would you have seen that ever before? That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Right in the theater district. That's absolutely insane. That is, the Annunciation shooting was the third mass shooting that took place in Minneapolis. And I've talked to police officers. They said it was the darkest moment in Minneapolis history. And so I have a lot of, friends and people I care about who are Minneapolis cops that I worry about as well. So of course I care about what's going on in Minneapolis.
I guess for me, I mean, just where I get stuck is like, I just don't think of the city and the politicians in the city as being one and the same.
You know what? You should spend some more time with me and you will.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to what we said before about your husband, because there's been a lot made about you and Bob Kroll, who is the head of the police union over here. I assume when you met him, that was his role, right? And so like there's all this. It turned into this whole partisan whatever, and I haven't seen anything said about like how did you guys meet? Because like you are not on paper two people I would think to come together. Like you're a journalist, he's the head of a union. There's a generational divide as well. He's 2 decades your senior, I think. Am I right?
No. 15 years.
15 years. It counts as 2 decades, doesn't it?
That's 20 years.
15 years, fair. But it's just not something I would assume would be like a natural coming together. How does it happen?
Yeah, so Bob was serving as the union president, and I had interviewed him a couple times, and he, as a reporter, was always great as far as he actually called you back, and a lot of people don't do that in these positions, but he was always known as kind of having an open door to reporters and getting the cop side of the story out there, which I respected. And it was funny, he actually emailed me and he said, this isn't about a story, but I wanted to know if you'd be interested in, kind of meeting me after work, like kind of a date. And I was like, Bob Kroll.
Yeah.
Of course, I had Googled him and I knew all the things, of course. And I actually went to my news director at the time at WCCO and told him about it.
Yeah.
And I said, I get along fine with him. And at this point, I'd been divorced for a couple of years. And I thought, maybe I should. And I worked nights, so I never really did go out, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I had a young son. And so I just thought, okay, I'm gonna told my news director that I thought I was going to do it. And he was, fine. And I just basically told him to just say that I probably shouldn't cover, Minneapolis police. I'm going to go on this date kind of thing. So I wanted to do it the ethical way. So I did. I met him out, and I just thought in that conversation, wow, isn't this interesting? You talk to somebody, and they're not this. I just thought he was like the biggest, monster, of course, because this is what he was really.
Where'd you go? Where'd you get drinks at?
Maxwell's. Maxwell's. And we kind of just hit it off, and then we had the conversation about our ages. Also, I think that was our second date, and we kind of passed each other our driver's license because I was figuring this out.
You exchanged driver's licenses on the first date?
And then I also ran his background. But I was like, okay, he's never been married, he has no kids. He seemed to, and then it was kind of like, you're that old, and he was kind of like, you're that young, because I am a little bit older as far as just the way that. But yeah, we really did hit it off, and that's what's so funny. And so many people have said this story about Bob too. He really is built up into this, like, I didn't know how much power he had, or he's this or he's that, and it's not even close to reality. He's a protector. Talk about caring about Minneapolis. I mean, these men and women that serve the Minneapolis Police Department are honestly among the best humans, I think, really on the planet. I mean, sure, they're bad people in every profession, absolutely. But what happened in the wake of George Floyd to me is just really repulsive, because I know so many of these people that really are willing to literally lay down their lives for the people of this community. And I've talked to some in the wake of this horrendous Annunciation shooting. Absolutely so sad to me. They're the first people that are on scene, ready to go in. I know the lunatic shot himself, but and carrying kids out and.
Oh my God! I'm trying to talk about your relationship.
I say that just to say that those are the things we really need to keep in mind as the cops. It's obviously personal to me.
What year did you guys start dating?
Well, he proposed about 5 months into our relationship.
Oh, wow.
I say it's because he needed someone to take care of him as he gets older. So So we've been. Here's what's terrible. I'm kind of like a guy in this arena, but we just celebrated our 7-year anniversary. So,
all right, you can do math now. 2018 then. 2018.
When we were married, yes.
We were married in 2018.
But we. But yeah, we kind of hit it off, and I'd been married before, and wasn't sure if I was gonna do that again, but yeah, that's a little bit about how we came together. And then I didn't know that you couldn't, as a reporter, you can't actually be married to a police officer.
Yeah, so it opened up a whole world of hurt.
Well, what's interesting is we were married for a couple years, 3 years, when this kind of two and a half years probably.
Yep.
When the Floyd thing happened, and then it was treated as if we had this secret marriage, and it was just, this crazy. I didn't think as a television anchor, you started your newscast every night like, "Good evening, I'm Liz Collin, and I'm married to Bob Kroll." But literally, that's what we started putting in my news stories in the wake of George Floyd, which I still think to this day is absolutely crazy. But it became a disclaimer on WCCO's website that who I was married to.
I have so many more questions I want to ask about this, but I also want to talk about media still. We only have 5 minutes left.
We only have 5 minutes? Oh, that's
I know,
right? I'm not paying any attention to time.
I know, you're good. I don't want you to pay attention to it.
That means you're having fun,
yes,
John.
Right?
John's really letting his guard down now.
I know. What do you want to ask me? You said you wanted to be a reporter.
I know. Actually, I was asking you so many questions before we started, and I said this is really challenging. I'm glad we had some good tense moments.
Yeah. Well, we're not done yet. Let me ask you about Alpha. I'm going to get into Alpha because I want to ask about.
I was going to ring the bell.
Oh no! Hold on. I want to ask you about money because Alpha is like an incredibly lean organization.
Yes.
I mean,
we're a nonprofit. We beg for donations.
Yeah, I was doing my thing. I was trying
Did you give me $20 for this interview?
Oh, I don't think that's ethical, right? You're married to Bob Kroll. No, the thing.
If you could put that on the screen somehow that I'm married to Bob Kroll, I'd really appreciate that.
The thing the last financial disclosure, because I was trying to be journalist on this thing, from Alpha was 2022. That's on IRS website. And it says that the revenue for the year is $1 million, which is incredibly lean. I wrote it down here somewhere, but it's like, I think it's NPR has like over $100 million budget, or $109 million for NPR, $57 million for TPT. How are you operating with $1 million a year?
Well, we just have, again, a few people.
How many?
And a few of us are only full time. We have a lot of contractors, independent contractors. Okay. That saves money.
Yep.
as you know. I think 4 of us are considered full time. I think I said 5, but 4.
Yeah.
And again, we don't have that many people. We're grateful, and actually we've grown quite a bit since that's the last financial disclosure. We obviously have more than that now because we were able to bring on, and all of our donations go to hire journalists.
Yeah, I could
that's
see
what we do.
2019, the disclosure said it was like $159,000, I think.
That was 1.5 people working there.
Yeah, and then 2022, it's at $1 million, so you can just imagine the trajectory is going that
even
way.
The Fall of Minneapolis, I think it was perhaps one of the cheaper documentaries ever made. These are really, it's really about a passion, I think, for all of us. We're not motivated by money. We all kind of come at it that way. We're motivated.
Do you get revenue from
by
YouTube for that?
Truth. Yeah, we the same way that other people would get.
Well, I get revenue on YouTube. Yeah, it's a part of the business.
I don't think you're, making millions at all, but yeah.
No, I think the best video I've done so far was a documentary on my barber in St. Paul, a little 10-minute documentary I did, and it got 750,000 views. So I'm playing at a different ballpark than you are.
Well, and what's interesting is we don't want to put those ads in, like on the Fall of Minneapolis. So we didn't monetize that at all.
Oh, really?
We don't want to put ads in our work that you kind of comes to a screeching halt when you're watching a documentary.
That answers a question of mine, because one of the things the disclosure said is that all of the revenue came from contributions, and basically from what I could tell, it looks like all the revenue comes from individual donors and large donors, but not from advertising.
Right.
Is that still accurate?
Yeah, we actually only have one. We kind of call it a sponsorship, but we're just kind of exploring that space now, because again, what we're able to do with contributions and money is hire more people, and then dig into more of these stories. So that's what's been important to us.
I mean, because independent media, from Joe Rogan to Tucker Carlson to Pod Save America, they're an advertising business, right? Like that seems like where the money is. Why hasn't that not been the thing that you've leaned more heavily into?
I don't know. It sounds like I have to talk to my boss.
Is that not a thing that you deal with?
No, I don't. Yeah.
That's one of my questions. Like, what is your role? Number one, do you own part of Alpha News?
No.
Are you an employee?
I'm an employee. Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so what is your day-to-day role there?
I help with, we don't really have titles, but I kind of would call myself like almost the news director. I try to help field what we're working on each and every day, and then I work on my podcast. We usually have another project usually going, whether it be a long-term news story, documentary, mini documentary kind of thing. So we're kind of doing all of those things. I look at a lot of the reporters' works as well. I make calls, reach out for comment sometimes for people, but
do you look at metrics? Are you worried about whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or
TikTok is
social?
something that is very important to my younger colleagues. I don't completely understand it, so I think they're putting on, but we have a monthly meeting where we go over our metrics. Sure.
Well, because it's something that we talk about here is like the kind of content that you make for YouTube isn't necessarily the same kind of content you're going to make for Instagram. Those algorithms work in different ways, and they have different audiences that are in there.
Yeah.
And so is that something that like is part of the editorial strategy when you're cutting pieces?
Yeah, again, working with the younger generation, they sometimes kind of figure that out, a little. Yeah, I mean, we try sometimes to pick a soundbite here, and we're going to put it here because it'll just make more sense. Probably the same conversations you're having with your content as well.
You said you do 5 stories a day. What do you define as a story? Is it a video story, a story?
Written stories. When I say 5,
got it. How many video releases are you trying to do?
So we're trying to do video content every day, whether it be a podcast or a few clips. We also have a big presence at the state capitol. Hank Long is our Capitol reporter, does a great job. Has been around for a long time, and so we're clipping a lot of things from press conferences. Talking to lawmakers that way, previewing elections. This will be something big coming up. So that's an important role for us as well.
How often are you doing those like long form? Like you shadowed an ICE team. Like how often are you doing those in the field pieces?
I think maybe we could say monthly. It really does just depend on the news cycle. And we also have a conversation of how would this story be presented best? Is it a video? Is it a written story? And that's what I think is great. We really are multimedia.
Sure. Is Alpha News a Liz Collin show, or is it other?
Now you asked me about my favorite cookie?
Why don't you answer the last one? I'm really curious to hear this. Like, is it Liz Collin, and like that's the thing, or is Liz Collin one of the products in Alpha News?
Oh, I think the Liz Collin Reports is one of the products of Alpha News. Yes.
Okay. Cool. I wish I could answer. I have so many more things I want to ask you, but that's it.
That's it. We survived, John.
That's the format.
We did it. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you.
So nice to meet you too.
That's fun.
You